I move slowly. I keep the world cool. Well, I used to. But humans keep warming this planet. I try to warn you. I send pieces of me thundering into the ocean. You do nothing. I raise sea levels. You do nothing. It has taken you decades to notice. Perhaps I'm not so slow after all.
Welcome back from lunch. We're going to go into a really special conversation right now where you're going to get to hear from the families who have chosen this service for their loved ones. And I'm going to introduce right now Carrie Davis, who made the choice for body composting as the 5th family in the state of Colorado to select this option when her husband Andy died. And we're going to start with a brief video, I believe, that was a local news piece that covered this story.
I don't know if I need them though.
Every walk,
like 3 blocks,
brings a family
but I said no. Wah, wah, wah.
closer together.
I know, I think we should go that way. Can you hold my hand while we're crossing the street?
Carrie
So
Davis
let's go that way.
and her daughter Kira come to their neighborhood park in Arvada
Ah! Ooh, there's a bee on that one.
to be with someone they love.
Beep, 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 beep. Beep, 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 beep. This is Andy's tree. And it's decorated for his birthday, because his birthday will be this Sunday. Would have been this Sunday.
Carrie's husband Andy passed away last November.
Your balloons fell down.
Not even the leukemia that took his life can stop them from celebrating his birthday.
Like in this book. He loved the outdoors. He loved snowboarding. He loved craft beer. He loved being a father to our daughter Kira.
Andy
So he was a
died at
stay-at-home
42.
father, once we moved
What he
up.
chose to do with his body will ensure it lives on in new ways.
Andy was the 5th person in the state of Colorado to be composted. Yes.
Human composting became legal in Colorado last year. As Andy battled cancer, Carrie asked him what he wanted to do when the time came.
It means he was naturally reduced. He was put in a vessel with lots of natural ingredients to help speed along the decomposition process. And after, I think, 3 to 4 months, he was a cubic yard of soil that people could use to bring life to other things. Just lift it this way.
The soil created from Andy's remains now sits in Carrie's garage,
We call it Andy's soil.
waiting for friends and family to take it and plant new life.
I love that we could share Andy with other people.
Andy still grows close to home.
This tree is special because it was planted with Andy's soil.
Of all the trees in the park,
It will always be a special part, for sure.
only one brings a family closer together.
Instead of visiting a cemetery or a grave site, we can visit a tree in a park around the corner from our house.
Andy's soil is being used to plant flowers and trees all over the country. At his celebration of life, his family gave out the soil with the intention that people can take him back home and grow life wherever they live. State law says you can only grow flowers, plants, or trees. Kyle, no food.
I'm glad that we followed up on this process after the first couple of folks we found out were going through the composting process to now see the way that it's impacted family and friends. It really is meaningful.
I've done several stories on this, and seeing that tree, you know, his daughter being able to go up to it and decorate it with happy birthday signs, it's a tangible thing to remember somebody that they love. And I think that's what's so special about this.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
So, welcome, please, Carrie Davis.
Thanks, everyone. I am here to share our story. My sister's crying. Of course.
Okay, so actually our story began with a People magazine in, let's see, late spring 2021. My guilty pleasure is People magazine. So I was reading the current edition of People magazine, and they actually had an article. I know it was mostly based upon Recompose with Katrina as part of the article. And so I'm a scientist myself. I'm a forensic scientist. I work for the state crime lab here. So of course, anything to do with science, it draws me in, right? So I read the article and noticed in the script of this article, it said that Colorado had recently passed the law too. So just something I guess I stored away. I know I had a conversation with my husband at the time about it. I know it was something that interested him too, but you know, it was kind of a superficial discussion that we had. Flash forward to a few months later, and he was re-diagnosed with leukemia at the age of 42. That was September of 2021. So he was hospitalized at the time. He went through some intense chemo. In the meantime, or maybe a month before my husband went into the hospital, I had reconnected with an old high school friend on Facebook that I hadn't spoken to in several years. His wife had just passed away from a heart event, and he said one of the biggest, I don't know if regret's the right word, but the hardest thing he was going through was the aftercare choices he was making for his wife, because they had never had a discussion. He didn't know if she wanted to be buried where they were living, where she was from, did she even want to be buried? Just, he never had the conversation with his wife. So he advised me once Andy got sick, you should have that conversation with your husband. So it was a really awkward, uncomfortable conversation, of course. But I did bring it up while he was in the hospital, and without hesitation, he said he wanted to be composted. That was it. That was the end of the conversation. I thought for sure he was going to make it through. He had made it through leukemia one other time. So that was kind of the extent of our conversation. So, of course, he passed away a couple months after that, after his initial second diagnosis. And again, without hesitation myself, it just seemed like the most natural thing to do, right? I'm a scientist. We both were not religious in our adulthood, and so I don't know, there was always just something so cold to me about being buried in a cemetery. Being embalmed was definitely not something I would have been interested in for us, or yeah, I just couldn't see us going through the traditional funeral type of thing. So of course, chose natural reduction, and I have some slides to show you guys just to explain kind of what we did end up doing with the soil, so or compost. So I have some pictures of our laying-in ceremony, which I'm pretty sure you guys have already seen some of, but this was Andy. So obviously we partnered up with the Natural Funeral in Lafayette, which of course after Andy passed away, I Googled it. There was only one place composting in the state of Colorado at the time. However, I think maybe even a few months before, we had eaten up at the Post in Lafayette. I live in Arvada, which is a suburb, a northern suburb of Denver. So we were eating at the Post one day, and I was like, huh, look at that. There's a natural funeral. I wonder what that is. So I know I Googled it at the time. So then, again, everything was just kind of natural and organic, the way everything happened. So so obviously, we chose Natural Funeral to use for Andy's services. And then for the laying-in ceremony, just trying to find the ideal setting for it. Seth actually suggested this space up in
Hygiene. Yeah, hygiene.
Hygiene. So ironically, this place is covered in weeping willows, which was Andy's favorite tree. So again, it was just naturally organic and was just the perfect place for us to do his laying-in ceremony. So, so in walking into this laying-in ceremony, we were told we can bring anything organic to put into his vessel with him. So Andy was a beer lover, so we have a friend that owns a brewery, so we went and got quite a few, or a few mason jars full of like hops and malt. So in this picture you can see there's some mason jars kind of down on the top of the hay, and so, so we bought some hops and barley to go into his vessel with him, and of course some flowers. We all added some flowers too, so.
Just hit that green button.
Green.
The top center, the one above you.
A. So this is Andy's sisters, probably putting in flowers or some sort of organic material into his vessel. Of course, the hay that was provided to us, we added a bunch of hay. And then more hay. And beer, we added beer. I think the natural funeral might have been a little shocked about the amount of beer that we were pouring into his vessel, because everybody wanted to pour a little out for Andy. So I know after the fact, Chris, which was one of his caretakers at the facility, said that Andy's processing went pretty quickly, and he thinks it has to do with all the beer and the hops and the barley that we added to his vessel. So obviously it's all part of that. So another really cool thing that we did, at least in my opinion, so the facility that they hold these vessels out for the months that it's under process was 3 blocks away from my workplace in Arvada. So Chris, who works for Natural Funeral or Alkaline Hydrolysis, I think I said that right, he took us in. It was great. He was beautiful. I know that he cared for Andy through all those months that Andy was there with him. And so I would sometimes go sit at the facility. They had a bench out front, and I would go sit at lunches sometimes and have my lunches with Andy. And then Andy loved cheesesteaks, was one of his favorite meals. So this is National Cheesesteak Day that me and one of my sisters and my daughter went and had cheesesteaks with Andy outside of the facility. So, so that was definitely a unique part of this process for us, is how cool it was that it was 3 blocks from my work, right? So I got to go say hi to Andy. One of my coworkers, who's my best friend at work, she drove past that facility every single day when she left work, and she said every single day, she said bye to Andy or hi to Andy, so that was awesome. Okay, so then what did we do with some of the compost? So as you saw in the news segment, we decided to plant a tree. So this is a park that's a couple blocks away from our house in Arvada. My daughter went to preschool, like literally you can't see it, but just outside this picture there's a preschool that she went to. And then there's a playground just down the way too. So we spent a lot of time in this park as my daughter was growing up. Andy was a stay-at-home dad, so he spent a lot of time with my daughter at this park. So, and then the city of Arvada has a plant a tree program. So we partnered up with the city of Arvada and, of course, picked a blue spruce because it's Colorado, and used some of Andy's compost to plant a tree in this park. So this is where we go to talk to Andy and say hi, and we decorate the tree for some holidays and, of course, his birthday. We just this morning, me and my mom went and met with the city of Arvada again, so we'll be installing a bench nearby the tree soon. So Ben was our officiant. He's also very awesome. Everybody really had a good time at we did a celebration of life. As you can see, we're wearing bright colors. We tried to make it fun. So this is just some pictures of us doing the tree planting. Me and my daughter adding some compost. Andy's sister and niece adding some compost to the tree. And then another fun thing that we did, or at least in my opinion fun, we wanted to share Andy with everybody, right? So we had so much compost material. So we filled quite a few 5-gallon buckets and sent plenty. Andy's family's from Florida, so they shipped a bunch home. They took a bunch with them. So I know Andy's mother or parents have planted a tree on their property. I don't think his sisters have done anything with it quite yet, but they all have volumes of some compost, and then we sent everybody home with a 16-ounce mason jar full of some compost for them to do whatever they want to with, but not food. We made sure to let them know that. We also handed out, I don't know if you can really see it in this picture, but Andy, we took an image of Andy, or a friend of ours took an image of Andy, turned his beard into a hops, which is what beer is made out of. And we printed a bunch of stickers, so we sent a bunch of stickers with people. They're all over the world now. We have a Facebook page that people post where they've hung up their pictures, obviously mostly at breweries, but it ends up other places too. So, and Mark Salinger, the news reporter, he put a sticker on his cooler, so Andy goes on adventures with him too. So this is a representation. This is what my daughter actually came up with. So without just explicitly saying on there, you're not supposed to use this for food, we said start your flower garden with love. So just to point out that you're not supposed to use it for food. And then we also used some of the compost to plant a smaller tree that came home with us and was sitting in our backyard. So that was part of the ceremony too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you for sharing that with us, Carrie. And we're going to hear from another family. I believe the Weiser family is. Katie, are you going to? This is the advancer.
I'm back again. This is Dina, and her mom went through the terramation process with us up in Washington, and then was brought home with Dina to Colorado, which is her home, and she is going to show you talk a little bit about her.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me here today. It's been an amazing experience these last few months. Return home has been amazing for us and has really helped us move through this process quite easily as possible. My beautiful mom, is she up there? Yep. That's my cutie mama. She passed away on November the 2nd of 2022. And our journey with Return Home and the human composting or terramation process started on October the 30th, so just a couple days before she passed. I've been going up to visit as often as possible, usually every couple of weeks. Her husband, Paul, had been taking care of her 24/7 for several years. I've been coming up as much as possible to help with that, and we decided it was time, while I was there the week before she passed, to figure out plans and get plans in place. She had 3 wishes as time went on. 1, she never wanted to lose cognition or brain function or ability to speak. 2nd was she wanted to die at home on the farm. And 3rd, she wanted to be cremated. Alzheimer's or dementia, whatever it was, took away number 1. We couldn't save her from that, but we could definitely honor number 2 and number 3. So as we started to talk about cremation, Paul said, I just can't fathom putting her in a hot fire and turning her into ash. Okay, well we can, what else were you thinking? Well, I guess we'll just go more classic. We went to a cemetery that we passed by all the time and thought that would be a great place. It looks out over the state fairgrounds, and if any of you grew up on a farm, state fairgrounds or the state fair, very important. So it looked out over that. We drive by it all the time, so we'd be able to say hi. We picked out plots. We walked the cemetery, which I wasn't prepared that we were going to do that day. But walked the cemetery, found a beautiful plot, bought 3 plots, one for my mom, one for Paul, and then one for either me or someone, my family, little family of 6 might need to use. It gets morning light, sunrise, sunset, light through the day, just a really beautiful spot. Took care of the marker, all of that. Next stop was going to be funeral home for casket. And as we were driving there, Paul said, I just can't fathom putting her in the ground. Like putting her in this casket and putting her in the ground. Okay. Well, I worked in hospice for a couple of years as a hospice nurse here in Colorado. And I said, well, what about, turning her into a tree or human composting? Oh, he thought that was going to be the thing. My mom loved to be outside, hiking, biking, running. She summited Mount Rainier a couple of times. She volunteered at the Nisqually Wildlife Refuge and assisted the biologist on many projects for years, always outside. So we thought that is the perfect thing. Power of technology. Looked up and I said, oh, look at that. There's some place in Auburn right here, 10 minutes away from us. So I called and left a message, flew home, got a call on Sunday to talk about what the process was, what that looked like for us, not thinking it was just going to be a couple of days away that she would pass. And it fit everything that we needed. I was able to take care of all the paperwork, the financial piece of it, everything, so that the only thing that he would have to do at the time of death is just make one phone call, and then they would walk him through that. He called that morning that she passed, and they said, okay, you need to make these other 2 phone calls since it was an at-home death. And we talked about it. I called, here are his wishes. He doesn't want to do this. He doesn't want to do that, or what he thought. But when return home came later that morning, because he wanted to watch their normal TV shows together and have the dog, Peep, their little French bulldog, be able to sit with her longer. So that was their morning routine, so that they could do that together. Called return home. They came. He felt so comfortable that he was able to help assist with the body, take the body out to be taken to the facility, which was amazing. And though I wasn't there that morning when she passed, I was able to talk to her the night before and tell her that it was okay to go. She was starting to transition. Breathing was really rough. I told her it was okay to go. And cutie mama, I'll see you later. And the last words she spoke to me, she hadn't spoken for a long time. She was still eating and drinking and would sit and watch TV and pet the dog, but hadn't spoken in a long time. And I said, okay, cutie mama, Deanie Weenie, I'm here. I love you. I'll see you, in a couple weeks. And I love you. And she surfaced from wherever she had been, and she looked right at me and said, I love you. And then she just kind of settled back in, and I left at 2 o'clock, and she started to decline right from that moment. And I was able to come in after she passed, which I would never be able to do in a regular mortuary situation, but I was able to help prepare her body. And as a registered nurse for over 20 years, I've helped babies come into the world. I've also helped assist parents who had lost a baby when the baby's delivered. And then in hospice, on the other end, helping, adults transitioning out and helping to prepare those bodies, and it's such an honor. And now I have the honor of helping to prepare my mom, as she had done for me when I was born, to prepare her for the next stage of her journey. So Bree came in on Saturday, and she explained it all, said if you need to step out, you can step out, brought me into where she was. We bathed her, we took her fingerprints, I washed her hair, was able to take locks of her hair and prepare those. I talked to her, I held her hand, I kissed her, and then I said, oh, little mama, I'm so sorry. I couldn't bring gardenias, her favorite flower. They're out of season and it's 2 weeks to get them, but I promise I'll bring them to you next time. And all of a sudden, this smell of gardenias just hit me, and it just pushed me back. And I looked at Bree and I said, oh my gosh. And she said, yep, that's the power of what we do. So I was able to kiss her forehead and talk to her and tell her what the girls were doing. We have 4 girls, and they loved their Nam, adored her, and told her what they were doing. And we had all written notes and to put underneath with her. And I think my sisters thought I was a little crazy for wanting to prepare her body. The girls and my husband, they're used to, like, you know, medical nurse mom doing crazy stuff. But for me, it was such a powerful part of this whole process, and allowing me to give back to her what she had given to me. We were very close. And so I was able to do that. And Bree kept going out and coming back. So I had some private time with her to just hold her hand and just commune with her. And, you know, finally it was time to go. And I looked back one more time because I felt that tug. And I looked back and I could feel her say, no, I'm ready now. And was able to go. And I came out of there walking to the car because Paul was like so worried. You know, he was like, are you sure you want to do this? Is this going to be really hard for you? I wanted to protect all of you from any of these things. And I said, no, you know, I think I'm going to be okay. And if not, you'll know in a few hours. So came out, and I was just completely all smiles. And he said, oh, I'm so happy. And did you get what you needed? And I said, I got what I needed and more. It was amazing. My sisters were able to come a week or so later and sit and have coffee with her and talk with her. I was able to come back and visit again, and when I put my hand on her vessel, I could feel the warmth come right through, like she knew that I was there with her. And it just gave us that time to grieve. It gave us that time to feel her still being close with us and being there and knowing that she was still going to be a part of this world with us. It allowed us the time to go through multiple iterations of what we wanted to do with her soil. We said, oh, we're going to spread it at the farm. We're going to take 200 pounds and spread it at the back of the property. A week later, I called and said, no, that's not what we're going to do. You know, we have a herd of elk, a herd of deer, a bear, foxes, coyotes that live at the back of the property. We just couldn't think of them, as Paul would say, fathom them coming through and running her, you know, through her soil. So, okay, well, what would we do? Well, let's just go back and maybe we would have her soil put at the cemetery. The cemetery had never done that before. So she said, well, we need you to put it in these containers and we need you to do this and that. I called and said, here's what she's telling us. Oh no, that's for ashes, that's not for soil. It's, you know, there's different rules or governance around that. So we got Returned Home and Woodbine Cemetery together. And the manager, Kathy, of Woodbine Cemetery went to Return Home, took a tour, spent time there, and called as soon as she left and said, oh my gosh, thank you so much for giving us this gift of coming up with a different idea for people to honor their loved one. So she said, here are 3 options that we've designed for Woodbine. What do you think of those options? I said, well, we don't really want her spread with other people. We don't really just want to intern a little box of her like you would ashes. We would like her soil put back to the soil. So she said, okay, that's what we'll do. So we'll just dig down to, you know, where it's still soil, and they'll put soil to soil. Fantastic. And then we were notified that she was ready to go. She was taken to Woodbine Cemetery. We were notified by them that the day and the time, the moment that her soil would be laid down. I got to see her several days later, and you could already tell that the grass was going to be beautiful. in that spot, and got to, talk with her, and then got to pick up the soil. My sister came and picked up 10 pounds of soil. She lives in Washington. I took 18 pounds home with me on the airplane. 10 had to go in my big suitcase. 18 pounds, or the other 8 pounds, went in my carry-on. And Katie sent me a letter because I said, what do I do if they ask me about this? Because I'd been traveling so much that now I get patted down every time I travel, and they always check my bags. So she sent me a letter. I went to check my bag. Is there anything hazardous, flammable, sharp, or something in there? And I said, no, but my mom's in there. And they said, oh, don't you want to take her with you? And I said, oh, I have 8 pounds of her over here. But this wouldn't fit. And they said, okay, well, we'll just put fragile stickers on it, and we'll put the suitcase through, and you can get her on the other side. And they said, gave their condolences and, best of luck on your journey. And they patted the suitcase and pushed it on. Then I go through security, and the bag goes through, and I'm having fun. Like, hey, Mama, we're going through security. You're going on a trip with me to Colorado. And because at one time we had thought she would come and maybe live out the rest of her days with us, with the girls and my husband, and she just wasn't able to do that. So here we go. We're going to go on this adventure. So the bag comes through. Whose bag is this? I'm going to have to open your bag. And I said, great, my mom's in there. And he went. So he talked to his coworker and said, he said, okay, I'm not going to desecrate it. I'm not going to open up the bags. I'm not going to do anything to your mom, but I have to x-ray her. And I'm like, awesome, my mom is loving this. So he had to take the bags out and put them in, and other people are looking like, ooh, what are you taking? X-rayed it, had to test it with the fluid. Then he said, do you want to repack her, or do you want me to? And I said, I'll take care of it. So kind of talking with her, along the way, and took her home and unpacked her. And so was sitting at our kind of a main door, and so we could pat her every time we go by. Hi, Nam Nam. Hi, Mama. How are you doing? I'll see you. I'm on my way to, take care of this baby tonight or that baby tonight. And the kids could say, oh, I'm, headed to Arizona for my, one of our daughters is a hunter jumper, equestrian. Can I do that? So then I take 4 pounds to Arizona, 2 for my younger sister, and 2 for our oldest daughter who had just moved there. And we planted plants in matching pots, and I'll have a matching pot as well. So we've already planted 2 plants with that. And the whole time my sister and I are talking and reminiscing, we continue to look at the bag. And my brother-in-law said, why are you guys looking at the bag? Like, you realize she's not there. And we both looked at him and we went, she is too there. She is in that bag. Like, can't you feel that? And he's a little more conservative and classic. And he's like, okay. So we talked to her and we're like, hey, sorry, Mom, we're going to share this story about you, and talk with her, which was great. They never asked me anything, did not x-ray her that time. So if you're counseling people about taking soil home, they may or may not need a letter. You may or may not be, have to declare what it is and all of that. But what this experience has really done for us is given us plenty of time to make sure that we were doing the right thing for our family, that we were doing the right thing for my mom. She was always outside, so really her going back to be soil again was absolutely the perfect decision. We chose the right place. Katie and all of her team are absolutely amazing. No matter how many times I called or relived and rehashed a piece of the story, they very patiently listened and honored that and gave us the information that we needed. We would get text messages with information, text messages checking in. How are you? Have you thought about this? Here's a resource for you. Social Security will take care of that. What else do we need to know? They would fill in the blanks for us, which was amazing. We knew that she was there with us, which gave us time to get through that. Whereas when my mother and father-in-law were buried, it was passing away, viewing, burial, and that was it. And it took us a long time, I think, to really get through some of the grieving with that piece of it. And now she's, there with us all the time. It also allowed us to feel that, all of her needs were being met. And now we have the soil that a childhood friend of hers, they went through Catholic school for 18, 19 years together. I'm going to take some to her. Her beloved personal trainer that she and her two best girlfriends went to for many, many, many years. He lives across the street from the cemetery, so he's going to watch out for her, but he's going to take her on her last journey, her last summit at Mount Rainier next year. I said, hey Josh, do you know anybody that's going to go at Mount Rainier? He said, well, does it have to be this year? Could it be next year? Because I'm going to summit and I would love the honor of taking her on her last climb. Fantastic, so there's some for that. I would talk to her every morning on my way to a race, whether it was a 5K, a marathon, an ultra marathon. I would call her at 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning. We would talk on the way to the race. We would talk sometimes during the race or text, and then we would talk after the race to talk about how it went, whether I was going up, Pikes Peak, doing the ascent, or running in Pine, Colorado through the mountains. Always there. So I'll take her with me this year on some of those races and pick some spots to spread her compost out. And there was a race, a 50-mile race I wanted to do in about 30 minutes away from her home, closer to Mount Rainier. And she was going to be my crew person for that. And she started to decline and get sicker, wasn't able to do that. So I'm going to do that this July and take her compost with me, and she can start with me, she can finish with me. I'll put her at the summits, which, she said, it's high elevation, Dean. You got to think about that at 6,000 feet. And I'm like, okay, Mom, okay, that's all right. I might be able to do 6,000 feet because we live at 5420 here. So I'll be able to take her up at the summits for that. And Paul and Josh, her trainer, will be my crew team for that. We'll be able to, she can go to college with our youngest, who will be going to college this fall. Just has really given us that gift of extending that out for us. So it's been an amazing experience for us. So you can tell that I'm excited about that whole process. And Return Home, Katie and all of her team have been absolutely amazing. So this is my mom. And just press the big green one, this one? Yep. Okay. So that's my little mom. She liked to be outside all the time, hiking, whatever it was. She was going up Mount Rainier to do something the day that our oldest daughter was born. And she said, Melissa, you cannot be born after 6 o'clock on Sunday morning. Melissa was born at 6:10. And Melissa, that was Melissa. And, she was like, Nam's got to go now, Melissa. I've got to go teach some people up on Mount Rainier. And she hadn't had any sleep much, but she was so excited. This is one of her partners in crime. My mom's on this side in the black shirt, and then her best friend Enid is on the other side. And there's another friend, Fran, that joined them. Thick as thieves, those guys. My mom, as she started to decline a little bit, would still able to walk at this point on the farm with us. Kind of towards the end, that was the last time that I saw her actually walking after I left after that trip. She was bedbound after that. My younger sister, my little mama, she had flown in and gone to breakfast at the bakery, which is our favorite place to go, the Black Diamond Bakery. Her last trip before she started getting sicker, she always had that little grin. She kind of had that overbite and wore it with pride. She and Eden, again, going on another hike. They hiked all the time. They were never home. That's one, last trip I took her. We went up to the tulips to see the tulips. And that was the last time she was really able to do that. And so we had fun. The back of our property there with Peep, the French bulldog there, and then their other dog that passed away a couple years ago. Because she could still go out. We'd have to keep her from going to the neighbor's house and talking to them because she couldn't find her way home sometimes. But sitting outside. There's our oldest daughter, Melissa Marie, with Nam's plant. She planted her, and we'll keep her other soil in a container. My younger sister Rachel's plant in the matching pot, so we're going to get another matching pot for me. Her placard that we picked out, they raised cranes for a while. Paul and my mom had reindeer and cranes and all sorts of interesting things on the farm after we got done with the normal farm animals, goats, cows, chickens, horses, all that. So there are cranes on there for her. Yeah, just a fantastic experience, and like you said, it's just amazing to be able to go and commune with them and not have to be, the normal body in the ground or anything like that. So amazing, amazing. Thank you so much.
We do have time for a few questions. If you have any questions for the families,
I have two questions. First one is specifically for Carrie. What's Andy's favorite beer?
Ooh. Colette was one of them, which is what we use, which is a Great Divide, which is a local Denver brewery. We lived in New Mexico. We actually met in New Mexico. So there's a double white made by Marble Brewery down there too. It's one of our favorites.
Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
My second question would be for both of you, I guess. As I'm describing what we're doing with this process, I often share with people, it's like the long goodbye. You know what I'm talking about? You go to visit relatives you haven't seen for a while, it's time to part company, and you're saying goodbye in the house, and they walk out to the driveway, and you say goodbye in the driveway, and then we get hugs and kisses, and then you get in the car, and they're reaching in the car, and then they're watching you as you drive down the driveway and pull away. And so I've described this process it's kind of like that. When your loved one is taking their last breath, it's not the last moment with them. And I want to know from each of you, if you wouldn't mind sharing, what value did you find from having that time of my loved one's dead and now their soil?
Do you want to go first? For that, it was the long goodbye, because even though she'd been declining and whatever was taking her away from us went out 2 to 3 years, you grieve then, but there's another part after they actually pass. And for us, it was the difference between the long goodbye, which really filled our souls and saved our spirit after she passed, or that in the ground done and it's over. So for us, it really saved us as a family. We were able to move through it gracefully. We were able to visit with her. We were able to go through each iteration of what do we want to do. And so by the time that 90 days was up and the soil was going to where it was going to go, we were good with that. We felt her with us that entire process. We never felt that she had left us. With the gardenias, while I was there preparing her body, the night before I flew out to do that, my sound machine had fallen behind my nightstand months earlier. Never got it out. I'll get that sometime. All of a sudden it came on, and it was playing the waves. And my older sister and I were born in La Jolla, California. We lived on the beach in La Jolla, very much beach waves people. And then my mom had a dream that we lived on an organic dairy goat farm. So we moved from the beach to this farm, and we lived on farms the rest of our lives, or her life. And it came on and it was playing that. And I'm like, okay, Mama, I'm gonna see you tomorrow. And then the morning that she passed, I knew that she had passed before I even got the call. I woke up, looked at my phone, nothing there. Okay, but something grabbed me, held me, laid me back down, and I went into this blissful sleep before I found out that she had actually passed a few hours later. So this opportunity for us to continue that long goodbye really saved us. It held her to us as long as we needed, and then she was ready to go to her next destination. And now we still talk to her. We pat her every time we go out the door. We talk to her. We tell her what we're doing. I may even carry her around in the car with me. Yeah, but for us, saving grace for us.
And I would say the same thing. I mean, it was a long goodbye for us too. My great great aunt died a couple months after Andy did, and my stepfather took her through a pretty traditional funeral service. And I remember sitting at her funeral like 2 weeks after she died and thinking to myself, like, how can you do this? Like, have the wherewithal in grief to plan a funeral and to carry it out and organize events. Like, I couldn't fathom that. So I'm so thankful that we did have those extra months to be able to have the long goodbye. And as you saw in our pictures and in my story, I would go sit with Andy at the facility, and so I very much appreciated that.
This isn't really a question because it was going to be a question, but I found where in the world is Anthony.
Oh.
Already joined and stuff.
Awesome. We have some stickers too, if anybody wants to grab a sticker.
Great. I would love one. And I love your idea. My husband wants to be terminated, loves beer. And we've lived in New Mexico for 10 years. So I love the idea because I'm going to tell him that. And he's going to be like, pour it on.
Awesome.
We have another question. Oh, we have another question back here.
Thank you both for sharing your story. I really appreciate it. I apologize I didn't catch your names, but for the one who you helped your mom through the process, you talked about kind of the 3 requests that she had, and I'd love to understand, obviously number 3 went down a different pathway. I'd love to understand how you kind of reconciled that within her wishes, because I think that this is such a new phenomenon and area for some folks that I think it's kind of good to understand how you and your family reconciled it.
Absolutely. Her wish was to be cremated because at that time, her belief was that there were 2 things, two paths that you can go on. Because it's against the law, we found out that we couldn't just take her to the back of the property and bury her ourselves, like they do on Yellowstone. Couldn't do that. So at the time that she got sick and then wasn't able to really communicate with us anymore, traditional cremation was the only option. But for her, had she known this, we talked about it with each person in the family, asked our 4 daughters, my husband, what do you think if we human composted or, Nam Nam went through terramation, and told them about it, and they're like, absolutely, that was what she would want if she knew that was an option versus being put in and traditionally cremated. So they agreed to that. My older sister, younger sister, the same. They're like, this is exactly what the right path for that is. Paul thought the same thing. Any of her friends that we would talk to, they all agreed. If anybody needs to go back to soil, your mom does, to go back to the earth, that was really going to be her way of resting peacefully and moving on to whatever the next part of her journey was. So in our minds, human composting to us is just a different form of cremation. It's not going to ashes, it's going to soil. But it also allows even more than what cremation does. Because when we looked into cremation, it was, they'll bring her body here, we put it in, it's done, you get this container in X amount of time, and there's only a small amount. And we're like, gosh, we got quite a few people that want some of this. So to us, the human composting gave us the opportunity for the long goodbye and to share her with everyone in her circle, to stay connected because she didn't want a service. Her mother passed away when she was 17. She didn't like funerals, she didn't like viewings, she didn't like any of that traditional stuff, didn't want that, did not want an obituary. So very non-traditional. So this really stuck in with that. this was totally her. If she had to pick, this is what she would pick for that. You're welcome.
Do you foresee, and you don't have to answer this question, do you foresee composting other family? Is this now like what you're considering as kind of your family tradition or other?
I would say yes. I mean, I have chosen that now for myself. I have it in my will to be composted. When I mentioned my great-great-aunt that died a couple months after Andy, my stepfather, even though she had already planned her funeral or had bought her plot and everything, he did choose a more natural way to bury her. So she was not embalmed, and he chose an all-natural wood coffin for her. And then, even though you go in a crypt underground, he chose not to have the top or the bottom. I can't remember which way. So it immediately influenced my stepdad in making that next decision. But I definitely think it's been a conversation within our family that yes, more of us will probably go that route.
I agree. I'll be probably either here in Colorado or in Auburn, wherever it is that I am when that happens. We'll do the same. Our 4 daughters want to do the same. My husband, Paul, as I said, we already have 2 plots sitting next to my mom for that. And yeah, I think my sister, younger sister, and older sister and her husband have decided to do the same. My brother-in-law, younger sister's husband, he's a little bit on the fence. He's like, I was raised a Catholic. It's kind of hard to get kind of out of that. So all of us, I think, are definitely putting that in. That's a great idea. I got to update Will to put that in there. My mom's stepmom, my grandmother, the only grandmother that I've known of my mom's, is 99, and she's just going on hospice this morning. And I'm already preparing myself because hers is going to be a very classic morgue, embalming, coffin, viewing in the ground. And I'm already preparing myself for that, of how I will do some things before I go to hold her memory in a different way, because that might be, that type of passing is going to be a little bit more difficult for me. So I'm going to go out and see her before that, so that I can see her now, and then hopefully not disturbed, but it's just going to be so abrupt on that part.
I'm curious if you visited the plot or have any relationship with the plot, or anyone in your family has a relationship with the plot where the soil is. The cemetery.
At the cemetery for us? Well, we do now that my mom's there, and we have 3 plots there. But the way that we chose that is that driving from Auburn out to Puyallup, or any place that we were going, if we went to Tacoma, we always went this back way. And it always, one road goes on one side of the cemetery and the other goes on the other side. And it looks out over the state fairgrounds. And so we would always pass it by. So that was really our connection to it, is, I think, and it's beautiful. It's all grass. We waved to it. We've already been by it probably 40 times since she's passed. And we wave every time, "Hey, Mom, how are you doing? We're going to stop by and we'll see you on our way back," and we'll stop and visit her plot. And then hopefully we'll look at plots soon for our daughters and my husband for that. And it's close by all of her friends, so they'll be able to go there. So it was kind of a by chance connection with it. But now it'll be a big part of our lives.
Thank you. Thanks for the questions, and if you would please give our families another thank you for sharing.
Can our next speaker come up to have a microphone placed?